Welcome to Through the Trauma podcast. My name is Amber Larkins, published photographer, storytelling expert, visual artist, entrepreneur, speaker, and coach. This podcast was born from one question: how do I get inspiring stories of triumph out to the people who need to hear them the most? Come with me, enter my world, where lives are getting changed, heroes are getting developed, and greatness is being achieved. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Through the Trauma podcast. I am Amber Larkins, your host, and today I have with me Dr. Guyden Jr. He is the CEO of Guiden Jr for Life, an organization that helps with leadership and all kinds of things to make our communities better places. Dr. Guyden, I am excited to talk with you today. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Amber. I'm excited to be here with you and reach our audience of people that need some inspiration and hope.
I'm excited to talk to you. Obviously, leadership is a huge thing in the mindset of people and people overcoming trauma. Tell us what got you started in this.
Well, this really starts. I'm originally from Shreveport, Louisiana. I was born in '74. My father left Yearwood Plantation around 68, 69, went to the Marines. My mother and father actually was in a segregated high school, Captain Shreve High School, which came from Captain Shreve, who in the 1800s during the Civil War pretty much was a Confederate captain. So that's kind of where I started. As a child, of course, as a kid, you're trying to understand what's going on with your family, your community, a lot of violence going on within the families, all families, just violence, a lot of physical abuse that was happening, verbal. We went through a lot of poverty. I remember just sometimes the lights being cut off, no gas for heat, the water being cut off. And, as far as affectionate, growing up in Shreveport, Louisiana, we showed affection in different ways. So those were the things that kind of impacted my foundation as far as my home life. And really things began to change quickly as early as third grade. I remember supposed to go to 81st Street School, which is right. My grandfather lived on 81st in Fairfield, which is in Cedar Grove. And I remember second grade going to my third grade, they closed down the school and we were bussed out to the suburban community. And I believe that's where really the things I just talked about really started surfacing, when we were bussed out to the elementary school, which as a kid, I'm trying to figure out, why do I have to go all the way out to this other community that I'm not from to get education? And even that was an experience. I remember just being put outside the classroom sometime because, white kid said something to me. I responded back, and then I would get put out of class. And from there, that just began to also impact who I was, home life, education, community. And that's where things began to kind of turn in my life.
Was this an issue of race? Is the reason why you were being bussed out, or was it an issue of poverty?
It was, yes, it was race. It was a lot of racism. As I said, Shreveport came from Captain Shreve, which, as I said, my father left Yearwood Plantation in 1968, 69. And the story was my dad used to get so sick at school because of the stress of what was going on in the environment. They were in a segregated high school. And my father had to leave that school. And actually, he went to the Marines, and that's how he graduated. So, yes, it was racism. It was a lot of racism, just hate. And it impacted how I felt about myself and how I felt about my parents, my dad, my mom, not understanding that how racism had impacted them as children. So now they have me and my brother, and those disparities, racism. And to the other question you said, the economic, because now financially my dad and mother are working hard trying to provide for us, and the economy was very rough in Shreveport, Louisiana. So yes, all of those things were factors: racism and the financial status.
Throughout childhood, this obviously affected you, and then it has kind of moved you into creating something, which I want to come back to the childhood, but I want you to give us just a quick like synopsis of what it is that you do and how you help people?
So, 2010, I'm gonna talk a little bit about as you get into the transition part. But around 2010, I was really struggling with my purpose, trying to find my purpose. And I remember I heard a voice, which at the time, I wasn't really, I was coming through my spiritual journey. And as we look at it now, it was the voice of God saying, I've been guiding you all your life. Call it guiding you for life. And that's why I started Guiding You for Life around 2008, 2009, going into 2010. And that was really where I really found my purpose of taking all of these things that I experienced from Shreveport, and I actually put it into a model and began to actually now going into community, working with youth, working even with churches, understand, how do we do urban community, working with teachers, working with politicians, civil people, businesses. And that's really where I started seeing the grace, the gift, the inspiration, the love, the hope that I was able to now, everything I wanted as a child, as a young adult, coming into fatherhood, marriage, all of those things, Guiding You for Life began to inspire me that I was worth everything that I had went through. I was valuable and that I was needed in the community and lives of others. And that's where the launching pad started in 2010.
I always love stories where I hear people turn their trauma into triumph.
Mm-hmm.
And I do believe all people struggle with trauma on some level, like we've all had
Yes.
some level of trauma. The beauty of a platform like this is that we can't understand other people's trauma until like that person begins to share with us.
Yes.
So I'm really glad that you brought this up, and I want to back up into your childhood because this is something that obviously it is something I've thought a lot, long and hard.
Mm.
My children are biracial. I've thought long
Mm.
and hard about how race affects them growing up in a
Yes.
community
Mm-hmm.
now. And I will be honest and say that I have not experienced, and I don't think that they've experienced racism. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I I like to say I try to shelter that, but they
Mm-hmm.
are growing up into the world. One's 9, one's 13, or about to be
Mm-hmm.
13,
Mm-hmm.
and unfortunately, we do still have it is still present in our culture. But
Mm-hmm.
I want to I as I've thought through this, obviously, I have, I have my thoughts and opinions and views as everybody else does, but
Mm-hmm.
I cannot fully relate as
Mm-hmm.
a white woman what the experience of a black man is. And
Mm-hmm.
going through these kinds of things as childhood and carrying that trauma because obviously you've probably had some things happen to you that is very traumatic.
Mm-hmm.
Can you take us through kind of what that looks like? Paint a picture for someone like myself, or maybe someone that we just can't even, we obviously we can't wrap our minds around what
Mm-hmm.
that even looks like.
I had a great model, which was my grandfather. He was mulatto, which is mixed, right? His father, based from the story, was white. His mother was black, and the father fell in love with his mother, which pretty much she was a slave. They had 3 children, and my grandfather was mulatto. So, really seeing how he struggled with being mixed, light skinned, had a third grade reading education, was a great model for me because he learned how to understanding how someone white thinks because he was part white, and understanding the trauma of being a black man. And he was a great model because he found a way, and it most definitely was spiritual because God really began to show him how all of this he went through. He became a community icon, which means he would always bring the whites and the blacks together, help them understand how to work together. He was very powerful with the black community as well as the white community. So he was a great model for me because I saw him really engage with love. He loved people. He understood people because he understood what he was dealing with. And he was a great model for me that really I stand on the foundation of my grandfather, really being a model. I was with him all the time. He taught me. I saw how he dealt with people. I saw his character, his integrity, his values. So those things really helped me to transition into the man I've become today.
Sometimes I think God will put people, and he obviously he doesn't make mistakes. He created each of us to be a certain thing
Hmm.
and to be a certain way, and sometimes to build those bridges. And I think that that's probably what your grandfather did, was build a
Hmm.
bridge.
Yes.
And that legacy we see unfolding even in your life. We see it
Yes.
unfolding even to this day. Like, he's left a legacy.
Yes.
Um, but I want you to talk a little bit about, like, maybe some of the experiences that
Mm.
being shipped out, like, what was that as a child? What was going through your mind, and what did that create inside of you, that you had to later deal
Hmm.
with?
Yes. It caused a lot of anger, of course. I became angry. I was bitter. I was frustrated. My confidence was low because, first of all, literacy. We talk about education, and let's really be honest. When we look at this school to prison pipeline, juvenile justice, we always look at third grade. So it's very, it's really funny that, not funny, but really looking at third grade is where things begin to impact my confidence, my self esteem. I was a little boy. I was excited about life. I was happy. I was in my community. And really from there is when everything changed in the community: the drugs, the firearms, the violence, the drinking, the alcohol, all those things begin to impact us because we were talking about 1983, which is the crack epidemic. So now we have the crack epidemic starting to impact Shreveport. And now it's creating this feud, which was already underlining racism, poverty, all those things. Now we have the crack. Now we have firearms. All these different things started impacting me. And before I knew it, I was just looking for love and acceptance. And before I knew it, all of those things began to play out into what we call a culture, to where now I'm becoming violent. I'm becoming mad. I'm becoming frustrated. So now I'm taking it out on my mother. I'm taking it out on my father. I'm taking it out on my peers. I'm taking it out on community. I'm taking it out on women. And that's where it really began to, I saw myself changing into something that was not me. And that was the impact of that.
Yeah, I can see that. And I think that what you're describing there is that want to be accepted and want to be loved, turning that into it like turned into anger, obviously.
Hmm.
And then this is what was manifesting out.
Yes.
And this is a perfect example of what trauma does to us in general. Not all trauma. I truly believe, I've said this before and I truly
Hmm.
stand by this, that I think that people that have trauma, if you do not deal with that trauma, like, obviously sometimes there's a grieving period or a certain period it takes to, like, kind of get clarity around that trauma. But
Hmm.
once, like, to continue to just stuff that trauma because you don't want to deal with it, it
Hmm.
ends up manifesting and coming out in some way.
Yes.
And I think what you're describing is it's that started to come out in violence and in anger and in frustration. But but the root problem, which you said it, and obviously you've gotten very clear on this, in your journey, but is that you wanted love. And I think that
Hmm.
you can take your story and apply that to what we're seeing today, what we're seeing
Hmm.
in youth today. Um,
Yes.
so many of them, I don't think they want to necessarily be the way that they are. They don't know
Mm-mm.
how to manage what is happening inside of them when
Hmm.
they're really looking for the root, but they're
Yes.
stuffing down everything because they've never been validated. They've never had anyone to show them the way or guide them or tell them. And that's what you're doing, which is a beautiful thing.
Yes. Yes. Because it was later on, even after our transition, I left Louisiana June 23rd of 1993. So I transitioned to Seattle. I have this opportunity to go to Seattle. And the motivation to Seattle was my cousin had married a gentleman who had moved to Seattle, his family, and they said, if you get your diploma, because at this time I had got kicked out of school twice, high school twice. And they told me, if you get your diploma, you can come to Seattle. So now I'm excited. I moved to Seattle. I'm an excited young man from the South in the big city. Tragedy strikes September 1st, 1993. So 2 months later, 500 pounds falls on me. 500 pounds falls on me, hits me in the head, knocked me unconscious, and I am dead and in hell. Literally, what happened? And I remember being there, and I remember the angel of the Lord came down and woke me up, brought me back to my natural conscious, helped me to push the 500 pounds off me, and I woke up. And the battle started all over again, because now the hurt, the pain, the past, I had 5 surgeries, 5 years from 1993 to 1988. 1998, I had 12 surgeries. I had psychological evaluations. I was on depression medication. I had chronic depression. I had a traumatic brain injury. So I'm now trying to figure out life again. I'm frustrated. I'm in Seattle. I have no family, no stability. And then I'm being impacted again by a system of the labor and industry system of basically saying it was my fault. Well, it's because he's from Shreveport, Louisiana, and this is why he's injured. He is making this up in his mind. He's not really injured. The 500 pounds and fall on, and mind you, Amber, there was documentation, doctors fighting for me. Literally, the governor's office had to step in to really say, you are not treating this young black man with his rights. So from 1993 till about 1998, going into 2000, I'm experiencing an L&I injury that changed my life again. So I took all of the pain I had, all of the frustration, and now I'm mad. I'm mad again. I have no hope. I don't believe in God. I don't believe nothing's going to change. And now I'm believing the whole thing about being from Shreveport. You know what? Yep, I am cursed. I'm a bad person. God doesn't love me. See, once again, I'm in Seattle, and look what's happening again. And that began another cycle of tragedy, trauma, and pain in my life again.
I often say this. People, I think there's layers. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that, like, when I look at my own trauma, which is totally unrelated to yours, but when I look at trauma in general, my own trauma, I will think that I'm over it. You think
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, yeah, I've overcome that. I'm past
Mm-hmm.
that. I'm much
Mm-hmm.
better than that. And then
Mm-hmm.
a trigger happens,
Yep.
or you're triggered by someone's actions, and
Mm-hmm.
it all comes tumbling down. You're like, whoa, like I just
Yes.
reacted to that thing.
Mm-hmm.
And now I realize I'm not over this. In
Mm-hmm.
fact, it's like another layer. And I almost feel like God, in his mercy, does this. Like, I feel like God does this to us so that we will, because at first we can't handle peeling back all
Mm-hmm.
the layers.
Yes.
So it takes time. And then something else will happen that'll push us to that breaking point. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, now we got to peel back another layer. There's another layer
Yes.
to this.
Mm-hmm.
But the beauty of it all is that by healing, which I do want us to get into your story in a little bit here about your healing process, but like through healing, he has created something magnificent, because what you're doing now is helping other people in leadership, guidance, creating impact, doing all of the
Yes.
things that ultimately makes the world a better place.
Yes. Yes. And that's where the transformation started. I got married in 2000. So probably, 5, 6 years later after the injury, the light comes on. I regain hope to understand, okay, there's something bigger of a story here, a message of why this happened. I gained new relationships with my wife. Got married 2000. The love, the faithfulness, the happiness. I became a family man. My social interaction changed. My personality began to shine, because I was like, wow, you know what? All this I've gone through. And I remember my wife, even at that time, was like, you have an amazing story. Like, I've not found a lot of black men who's gone through what you've gone through and able to stand here and have all this joy and excitement about life. And that's what I use to really started now using what I had went through to come to others and be a model to say there is hope. And that's what I started the whole project, handling overwhelming pressures effectively. And I just remember going speaking to schools, juvenile facilities, community events, started talking to parents, men, children, leaders, folks who had been in the faith, who lost hope in God, began to speak with them. And I used everything. And to your point, you said earlier, God ordained this because I was built for this. He had predestined this. He knew it was going to happen. He knew way before I knew what was going to happen when I got to Seattle, how he was going to use all of these things so that I can be a beacon of hope and inspiration to others. And that's exactly what I began to use. I began to deal with the roots of things. I started having conversations with my mother, my father, uncles, family, started really looking back at the family history and started really identifying the generational patterns. I was like, wait a minute. Okay. This person in the family went through this. Okay. This makes sense. So I really started understanding my warfare, understanding the spirits in the darkness that also was trying to dismantle and disrupt the legacy that I was called to build. And it all started making sense. The stories and different things I experienced. I heard things that my grandfather used to tell me. That's where I started gaining my faith and my hope and love for God and for community and people. And that was the exciting part of my life.
So, do you believe that this is just a kind of a caveat here, but I'm curious. Do you believe that you found true fulfillment by giving back, by really putting yourself out there as this this conduit almost of being able to give back into the community and help other people overcome traumas that you had overcome?
Yes, because I was given a gift. And I remember one time being in a room. That's a great question, Amber. And I was sitting in this room and I was like, okay, God, I'm sitting here and am I really making impact? There was a lady sitting across from me. She kept looking around. She kept looking at me. And she said, I don't have a question. She says, first of all, I just want to say that, as you're sitting here talking, she said, the hairs on my arms is standing up. She says, do you believe you a gift that was sent from above? And when she said that, I was like, gift. She says, you have a gift. And she says, continue to use the gift that he's giving you. And that's all I want to tell you. So yes, when I realized he had given me a gift, I had to use it. And by me using the gift, it gave me strength. It gave me courage. It gave me confidence. It gave me excitement. It gave me gladness. It gave me hope. And it also, I was able to regain the financial stability I needed for my family. Because remember, I went through L&I. So I was like, God, how am I going to take care of my family? How am I going to take care of buying a home? So all of those things came because I used the gift that he gave me and I didn't put it on the table. I used it and he began to expand the gift and expand the gift and bring more opportunities and build more capacity. And yes, and when I look back, 15, 20 years ago, I'm like, wow, I am so excited that you chose me to go through this journey, this suffering, all these losses, disappointments. Because now, even today, I'm sitting here on a podcast talking to you, and now I get to share this story.
Mm. And it's such a
Mm-hmm.
beautiful thing. And, I think that so many times people don't realize that that's what you just described. I truly believe every single person has a purpose and has a
Mm-hmm.
reason, and they're a gift. There's a reason they're here. Like everyone
Yes.
that's listening, like there's a reason you're here,
Mm-hmm.
and it's up to us to find that, to
Yes.
to explore life and throughout our journey and figure out why we're here and what it is
Mm-hmm.
that drives us. But I think this goes back to this whole idea of fellowship, which is it being alone, like being there's a time and a place to be alone, but being alone being a loner, like being someone that doesn't I don't need other people. I just want to
Mm-hmm.
take care of myself. I don't want to help other people. I don't want to be bothered by other people. I don't, being that kind of person, you lack fulfillment. I truly believe that you find fulfillment by going out and helping others. And I truly believe that the experiences that we experience,
Mm-hmm.
it's literally turning our pain into power. And we all have the capacity to do that. It's just,
Yes.
do we make the choice to do that? Or
Do we make the choice? Mm-hmm.
do you choose to stay in this victim
Yeah.
mentality or a,
Mm-hmm.
woe is me kind of
What was me? Yep. And
attitude?
the other thing is, to your point, is that also it's the biggest thing that I dealt with was, I mean, am I smart enough? Can I do this? Does my story, these people have this. And I remember someone telling me, stop looking right at others and keep your hands to the plow. This is who God has made you, and embrace it and be excited about it. He's made you different. He uses you in different ways that he doesn't use the average person. And I began to embrace that. The things I would hear and say and the concepts and things I would begin to do, people would say, how are you doing this? Where did this come from? Like, how can you run a business? How can you be a family man, marriage, children, all my children in college, my grandkids? Like, it began to show pretty much a model of real transformation, because people want relevance. We can talk about a lot of stuff, we can share a lot of information, but people want to see something that's relevant, that's real, that they can say, okay, you know what, whatever this person is talking about, I see he doesn't look like anything he's saying. I see this person here, but I'm hearing this. Wow, that's amazing. And that's what I call the trophies. We are ambassadors. So it was just so much excitement, so much fulfillment that that I still get today. Emails today, phone calls today of people, hey, we need you to come in, Dr. Lewis, and you have an amazing opportunity. We want you to come in and speak. Can you come help us do this? So that's my journey, that's my story every day.
Mm. And that's so powerful. I can totally relate to what you're saying. I think that the transformational journey it's a
Mm-hmm.
beautiful journey. And it does come down to making the choice. And I think that this is why I think it is awesome when people showcase, like they're not scared to talk about the past or the
Mm-hmm.
person they were,
Mm-hmm.
and then they can talk about the person they've become, because it gives
Yes.
hope
Mm-hmm.
to others who are like, well, I don't think I'm good enough. And you just
Mm-hmm.
dropped the mic right there, like speaking of
Mm-hmm.
that, like, because I experienced the same thing where I felt like I wasn't, like I was constantly comparing myself to other people. And I had a
Mm-hmm.
very similar experience where God was like, I made you individual for that
That's
reason.
right.
And when you
Mm-hmm.
grow in that confidence, that's also fulfilling, because
Yes.
then okay, no one else can do this. No one else can do this job. God
Nobody
created
else can
me to
do it.
do this.
That's
And
right.
they might can do it, but they're not going to do it like I do it. And I'm not going to
Absolutely.
do it like they do it.
Yes.
And they might be able to attract some people and help some people,
Mm-hmm.
but I have my own people that
Yes.
are assigned that I'm going to attract and
Absolutely.
help. And then I've been assigned to other people to help it. It's just a
Absolutely.
beautiful
Yes.
cycle of life and personal growth. And
Yes.
this is why I do what I do. I love hearing
Mm-hmm.
transformation stories. um,
Yes. I
but
appreciate you.
so talk to us a little bit about, obviously you've been through these experiences, you've decided that you need transformation.
Mm-hmm.
Your wife obviously played a big part in this as well,
Yes.
like being an
Mm-hmm.
encouragement and coming
Yes.
alongside of you and really kind of pushing you into that, becoming that person that God really
Yes.
created you to be. And that's the
Mm-hmm.
beauty of marriage, because sometimes,
Yes.
God puts us with somebody that can do that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so talk to us a little bit about what that looks like now. What are you doing in the communities? Like,
Okay.
who are you targeting? Who are you aimed more towards? What really drives your heart? I know I've asked a bunch of questions there, so I'll stop there. But
So in other words, what do you do with all of
what do
this?
you, what do you
You
do and what
know,
do you love to do?
yes, really it's evolutionary leadership, probably about a year or two ago. My wife, which she's Dr. Ebony Guyden, we were sitting on the sofa and we just started talking about this evolving. So we created this, what we call evolutionary leadership, which is an innovative model for 21st century leaders. And really what it is, it's a methodology that deconstructs the models, the mental models that limit and restrict effective leadership and personal growth. So we took that and then we began to basically put together a new model, which is we realized, and by doing this, leaders can acquire the breadth and depth of the leadership abilities that they need, get the competencies they need to overcome environmental obstacles, uncertainties, complexity, anything that hinders effective growth and decision making. And what we built is Guiden You for Life, which is GU4L, which is a new platform. I'm going to talk a little bit about that later, but it's really here to help businesses, because there are businesses that need evolutionary leadership. There are nonprofits that need support. There are managers, directors, school leadership. There are staff. There's youth. There are mothers. There's fathers, and there are just community members. And we're really here to enhance their personal development in critical areas to ensure they have the knowledge, the skills, and the tools needed to thrive as remarkable leaders. So we built this evolutionary leadership, which now is to impact community, emerging leaders, evolving leaders, and transition leaders, and into all of the main industries that now we can bring, I would say, transformational. So I'm excited about it. Something new. This is new for me, the podcasting. So this is where we are, evolutionary leadership.
That's awesome, because it's really encompassing of anyone that's in a leadership position to help them grow and become better leaders, which
Yes.
it's something that I do definitely believe that we need. And I think that it goes back to this idea of how many people can we impact? Well, if we impact one, we've made a difference, right? But if we
Yes.
can figure out how, and God calls different people to different capacities of the amount of people that you help. But if you can figure out a system to where now you can start to filter this down, to communicate this to these people, and then those people
Mm-hmm.
communicate to these people, you create a ripple effect of positivity, a ripple
Yes.
effect of growth,
Yes.
mindset development, and
Mm-hmm.
especially in communities. So I think it's a wonderful thing what you do. Are these different companies, or it's all one company that you and your wife run? And then do you guys bring people in, or do you go out to them, or do you have classes, or how does that work?
That's a good question. So it's under one brand, Guiden You for Life, which is a business. This is one brand. So under this, we have our training and workshops, which can be virtual or in person. Of course, I like the in person because I like you to really experience the evolutionary leadership, which is me. We also do capacity building and technical assistance and consulting, because we know sometimes folks would like to start a business or start a nonprofit or have started a business or nonprofit and just need some technical assistance and capacity building. What are some of those things? So with the new platform that we're launching through Guiden You for Life, we will be launching our leadership academies, which basically in about 2 weeks. I'm really excited. I'm just waiting on our whole tech guys to get this ready. But in that, we will have micro coaching and learning, which will have about 300 plus sessions, which means you can go through your own coaching, micro learning. Each pretty much coaching is like a 4 week long session. There's 300 of those. We also going to have some self-paced courses, which are like your soft skills, things you can learn about leadership, communication, anything, whether it be leader, business, whatever. And then we're going to have some audio book series, which is about 100 plus courses. And then one of the things we really wanted to make sure was that leaders can have the personal support forms and templates. Sometimes I remember in leadership, it was times, well, man, how do I create a PowerPoint? Or how do I create an agenda? How can I create a case study? We're going to have probably 100 plus templates and forums that you'll have access to through our subscription base. So all of this will be through subscription base, which we'll be launching in probably about the next 2 to 3 weeks. You'll be able to go on our website, log in, do your subscriptions. You can also request trainings and workshops. You can also request if you need speaking, me to come do speaking, seminar, or capacity building technical assistance,
Mhm.
all under one brand.
Do you coach on leadership itself? And then you also coach on starting these organizations where leaders can step in and run it like the nonprofits?
Yes, it's both. So it's really leadership is about influence. So how do we help people with their influence, no matter where they're sitting? If they're in business, if they're a nonprofit, if they're in community, if they're in a church, if they're a father, we have fathers who just want to have more leadership capacity, mothers, youth, individuals. So it's really about how do we help you build the capacity so that you have the influence. And inside of this, I would say, kind of system or platform, we will be able to give any leader, emerging, evolving, or transitioning leader, what they need so that they can get personal growth and development to expand into whatever they're called to do. Absolutely.
It's a beautiful thing. And where do you see this growing to? Like, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
First of all, I see Guiden You for Life becoming a pioneer in what we call evolutionary leadership, as well as impact other communities to gain access. I see me doing podcasting, YouTubing, TED Talks, whatever. It's just so many things I see that's going to happen in the next 5 years. But the biggest thing is that my family, my marriage, my children, my great great grandchildren, all of them will have a legacy, as well as while this is impacting others. So I'm excited about that I was able to be one to change the next generation through this business. So I'm excited about that for the next 5 years.
Mhm. And when you reflect back on like childhood and all of the things, all of the traumas, all the things that you've dealt with throughout your life,
Hmm.
like how does that how does that change, or I guess like what is the big impact that that makes on what you do now?
Mm. Well, number one, I'm a black man, been married 24 years, right? That right there is a huge impact. Number two, I'm a father. Okay. Made 7 kids, 2 grandkids. So coming from childhood and looking forward, which I just turned 50, I'm like, wow. And 5 is a number of grace. I see the grace that was merited to me to be where I am today, from that child that was broken at 5 till now an adult male father, husband, leader, grandfather at 50. That's what I see is the grace that was merited to me to be here sitting in this seat, but also using the seat of authority the right way. That's how I would answer that question.
That's awesome. Um, so right now, taking all of your past experience and into what you're doing right now, um, what advice would you have for someone's listening? Let's say that they are struggling with kind of anger and they don't even really know where it's coming from. That's the thing with trauma. Sometimes you don't know where it's coming from. You just know that, hey, I'm angry and I don't like this group of people, or I don't like that, whatever, you just
Hmm.
get angry. But usually there's a root issue as to
Hmm.
why you're angry. Um, so if someone was dealing with that right now, and let's just say that it is particular to race, because even though we like to think we've progressed and it's not in our culture, I mean, it still is. Um, what would you say to someone that maybe like they have anger? Like how would they navigate that? How would
Mm. That's a good question. It's a loaded question, but one word that comes to mind is real. We have to be real, which is responsible. I have to take responsibility for my actions, right? E stands for ethical, right? What are the things that I need to, the morals and values that I need to identify in my life? Who are the people that can help me get back ethical, doing what's right when no one's looking? And then the A is for how do I get back to being my authentic self, my true self? Yes, I'm angry, but how do I get back to being my authentic self? Finding my true self. And the last one is L, loving. It's really being real. Getting back to being responsible, I had to take responsibility. There's a lot of things that I was doing. I had to get back to the ethics. I had to become more authentic, which is I had to get a lot of accountability in my life, which is people that's going to tell me the truth. They don't care about my feelings. Lewis, you're upset. You can't be that way. And really, it was the loving. So that's what I would say real, getting real with ourselves.
I love that. And then if I just had to add anything to that, I would just say perspective, because
Mm-hmm.
how we perceive things, I mean, obviously
Mm-hmm.
we can't change what happens to us, and we do live in a
Yes.
world where things do happen to us regardless of what type of trauma you've been through. Sometimes it's really not your fault. Some things are,
Yes.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
self-inflicted, but some things are not. And how do you see that? You know, do you
Mm-hmm.
see it as it's a very negative thing, but it can
Mm-hmm.
be a positive thing, as we've just heard you describe? And or how do you take that negative thing and turn it to a positive?
Yes.
And then how do you see things like, I may not be able to control
Mm-hmm.
what's happened to me, but I can
Yes.
control how I respond, and I get the
Absolutely.
option to make a
Mm-hmm.
choice. And I think
Yes.
that's the beauty of
Yes.
humanity, is
It
that we
is.
get the option to make a choice. We can choose. We can choose to be
Yes.
bitter. We can choose to be better.
Absolutely.
We can choose
Yes.
to be angry, or we can choose to be
Mm-hmm.
happy.
Yes. And you
It's a
just described an amazing curriculum that I developed called PACT: Perceptions, Actions, Choice, Time. You just identify the curriculum that I love teaching leaders, youth, men, and women. Everything starts with our perceptions. What's happened in our lives becomes a view of how we see ourselves and how we see others and how we see life. Actions. What are the things? What are the roots of the things that I'm not addressing that continues to create these behaviors which everyone sees? And then C is what are the right choices I need to make, right? I need to have accountability in my life. And then T stands for time. The time we spend stand on that cycle, that wheel, staying stuck in the hole, staying stuck in mindsets. That is an amazing curriculum that I developed. That was the launching pad in 2010. And what you just described is PACT, PACT, and it stands for New Covenant, New Agreement. How do you make a new agreement, a new covenant in your life? So I love how you already put that out there. The pack is something I love to teach and use because that's what it deals with, those four letters.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of being on like these platforms, podcast platforms, is that I truly believe in like energy, and I think that when you sit down with someone and you have a conversation, you it's like a transfer of energy. And it's when you align with that person, it's like, oh, we can just jive back and forth, like all these amazing things that are definitely true to human growth and
Mm-hmm.
development. So I love that you're teaching that. I think that leadership is a huge thing that all
Mm-hmm.
people need, because we're all
Yes.
leaders.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter if you don't think you are. If you're on social media and you have 5 followers, you're a leader.
You
You're
got
a leader to
influence.
those 5 people.
Yes,
Right.
right.
So, that goes back to
You have
perception too.
influence. How you using your influence is key. Yes.
And yes, and that's something, awareness, I think, is a big thing too. Like,
Yes.
am I aware of am I aware that there's an issue? Am I aware of how
Yes.
I'm responding? Am I
Mm-hmm.
aware of how I'm treating other people?
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
am I aware that
Yes.
when I act in toxicity, that it's actually hurting me? It's
Yes.
making me less fulfilled versus making me more
Absolutely.
fulfilled.
Yeah.
So these are all questions that I think people need to ask themselves daily. I can't understand why everybody doesn't want the max amount of self-growth in their life, because
Listen, I understand. I love that people are excited to see me. When I go into a room, I should make people be excited to see me, not run from me. And when you talk about awareness, I just remember like I don't want to be known for the person that people, when I come to the room, oh, here he come. He's coming with problem. He want to fight. He wants to do this. He's negative. I am so thankful in my life today that people are excited to see me and happy to see me. And me, that's influence. That is evolutionary leadership. That is the impact I'm leaving on others to say, wow, he's going through all of that. But look at him smiling, happy, and he still is able to have an awareness and also help others to come to awareness of themselves. So what you just described is absolutely true. Awareness. You have to be aware of yourself at all times.
Well, and you have learned from hearing your story, you've learned to love through the heartache and
Yes.
through the pain. And I think
Yes.
that at the end of the day, love is huge.
It
And I think
is.
it gets a bad rap a little bit. Like
Mm-hmm.
people, they misuse the term, like, oh, you have to love everything, and but what does that really mean and look like?
Yes.
Loving is understanding, validating
Mm-hmm.
people, feeling like
Yes.
telling them when they're wrong though, also because that's an that's a act of love, by
It is.
saying, you're doing something that's going to hurt you, and I'm telling you this
Yes.
because I love you, and I
Yes.
don't want to see you get hurt. So
Absolutely.
I think
Yes.
you're a
Love.
perfect representation of that, my friend. I'm so excited for what you're doing. If you had to leave my listeners with anything, like a big takeaway, or what would you leave them with?
Don't get caught up in the past. Don't get caught up in the past. Um, Look at each day as a new opportunity to bring about change. Don't get caught up in the past of yesterday, last hour, last week, 9 o'clock this morning. Think about the present moment of how you can make a change to now move you forward into what you really want to see. That's what I would say.
I love
Don't get
that.
stuck in the past.
Yeah. I love that. The
Mm-hmm.
past is yesterday.
Yep.
And, I really believe we should live in the present because even the
Mm-hmm.
future is not promised. I mean,
That's right.
you could take your last breath at any moment.
Mm-hmm.
It's not promised.
Yes.
But
Mm-hmm.
living in the present and loving people in the present and loving them, meeting them where they are,
Yes.
um, it's huge. So
It's huge.
before we go, I do want you to tell people where they can find you. I will put all of that in the show notes as well. But for those that are not going to go to the show notes and they just listen, go ahead and share with us where people can find more about you.
Oh, thank you. So, of course, our website, as I said earlier, we're going to be probably the next 2 weeks relaunching, but it's www.guidenforlife.com. That's GUIDEN, the letter U, the number 4, life, LIFE.com. Also, you can go on LinkedIn and find me, Dr. Lewis Guyden Jr. Also, you can email me at info@guidenyouforlife.com. And then we have a number, 800 number, which is 888-471-4443. That's how you connect with us. I'm excited. Thank you for having me. And I'm looking forward to the evolutionary leadership that has happened today on this podcast.
Yeah, I'm excited too, and I think the more people you can get your message out there too, the better. And
Yes.
that's what it's about. It's really about linking arms with others and getting that impact really, really to as many people as possible. So I appreciate you so much. I thank you so much for coming on and sharing with us today.
Thank you for having me, and I would love to come back in the future.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for listening to Through the Trauma podcast. If you have found value in this episode or believe in the mission behind what we are doing, please subscribe so that you never miss any future episodes. Also, be sure to check out our transformation project at transformationthroughtraumaproject.com, where we help inspirational stories get heard on a larger scale through multiple platforms. If you know someone who can benefit from this episode, please share it with them. Until next time.